Through Frankenstein, Mary Shelley explores the psychological struggle of desire in both Victor Frankenstein and his creation. Victor desires to create a new species, and that desire transforms into an obsession that blinds him to reason and morality. In contrast, the creature longs for acceptance, companionship, and love. Victor's refusal to take responsibility for his creation, along with his rejection of the creature's plea for a companion, produces devastating psychological consequences. Ultimately, the creature's emotional depth, need for connection, response to rejection, and search for meaning proves that he possesses the psychological qualities of a human being. The novel begins with Robert Walton and his ambitious desire to sail across the northern seas in search of discovery and glory. In his letters, Walton reveals not only his thirst for knowledge, but also his intense loneliness. He feels isolated because he believes his intellect and dreams separate him from the others. He longs for a friend who can understand his passions and ambitions. This emotional isolation mirrors Victor's self-imposed isolation when he becomes consumed with scientific discovery. Walton's willingness to risk everything for greatness foreshadows Victor's own dangerous ambition. When Walton rescues Victor from the ice, he feels immediate connection to him, seeing in Victor a reflection of his own ambitions. Through Walton, Shelley introduces the idea that unchecked desires and isolation can distort the human psyche. Victor then goes on to describe his childhood as loving and supportive. He grows up surrounded by affection, encouragement, and intellectual stimulation. This perfect childhood sharply contrasts with the creature's experience. While Victor is nurtured and guided, the being he created is born into abandonment. This contrast intensifies the tragedy of the creature's suffering. Victor understands love, belonging, and companionship, yet he denies those things to his own creation. This feeling of dejection due to envy of family and love the creature sees through Victor's childhood and the Lacey family is stemmed from the anterior cingulate cortex, particularly the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. This is activated during social pain and it detects when we fall short compared to others. At the University of Ingolstadt, Victor's curiosity evolves into obsession. He becomes determined to create a new species in which he is the creator and God. His ambition blinds him to moral responsibility. He isolates himself from friends and family, neglects his health, and pours all his energy into his experiments. He admits that he seemed to have lost all soul and sensation except for this one pursuit, revealing how completely his identity becomes consumed with desire. His fixation resembles compulsive behavior where ambition overrides empathy and reason. Victor's psychological imbalance demonstrates how humans' desire, when unchecked, can lead to destruction. Victor's blinding ambition stems from the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which controls goal-directed behavior, overall causing this obsession to achieve goals. However, the novel's deeper psychological study lies in the creature. When Victor finally animates him, the creature's dull yellow eyes open not into celebration, but into rejection. Victor flees in horror, abandoning the being at the very moment he most needs guidance. Victor says, "The beauty of the dream vanished, and breathless horror and disgust filled my heart." The creature enters the world innocent and confused. He must learn language, emotion, and morality on his own. As he wanders through forests and villages, he seeks shelter and understanding. Instead, he is met with fear and violence. People judge him solely on his appearance, assuming he is evil before he's committed any wrongdoings. The creature's suffering mirrors the human experience of social rejection. Neuroscience suggests that social exclusion activates the dorsal cingulate cortex, a region of the brain associated with processing emotional pain. Humans are biologically wired to seek belonging. Rejection causes real psychological distress. The creature exhibits the same distress. He longs for companionship, studies the De Lacy family in hopes of connection, and dreams of being accepted. His desire for companion is not rooted in malice, but in loneliness. He even says, "I was benevolent and good. Misery made me a fiend, and everywhere I see bliss from which I alone am irrevocably excluded." An article titled "Social Acceptance and Rejection, the Sweet and the Bitter" argues that humans require positive and lasting relationships for emotional well-being. The creature's psychological deterioration after repeated rejection mirrors what research shows occurs in humans deprived of belonging. When his plea for companionship is denied, the creature's despair turns into rage. After enduring continuous isolation and cruelty, his longing for acceptance transforms into a desire for revenge. His murder of William and other destructive acts are morally wrong, yet they stem from emotional pain rather than inherent evil. Studies on the brain reward system suggest that retaliation can temporarily activate feelings of gratification, especially in individuals who feel wronged or excluded. This retaliation stems from the amygdala, which processes anger and triggers defensive or aggressive responses. The creature's revenge reflects this psychological pattern. His violence is not the behavior of a mindless monster, but of a being deeply rooted in abandonment. When Victor and the creature finally confront one another, the creature desperately begs Victor to create a female companion for him. He pleads, "Shall each man find a wife for his bosom, and each beast have a mate?" He argues that companionship is a natural right granted to all living beings. In this moment, the creature is not driven by violence, but by longing. He insists that he is not inherently evil, and having a partner will remove his suffering and desire for revenge. He explains he is malicious because he is miserable. This confession reveals that his cruelty is a product of rejection and abandonment rather than natural wickedness. After the creature murders many of Victor's loved ones, Victor becomes consumed with a need for revenge. Victor becomes obsessed with pursuing the creature and sacrifices his health and his life in an attempt to catch the creature. This parallels the beginning of the novel when Victor becomes obsessed with science and creating the creature. Victor even states, "I pursued him as ardently as I once pursued science, and you can blast my other passions, but revenge remains." This proves the extent of the obsession that Victor has with getting revenge for the creature. Most importantly, the creature demonstrates self-awareness and reasoning, and existential reflection. He questions his purpose, his creator's responsibility, and the nature of good and evil. He reads literature, contemplates his identity, and recognizes the injustice of his suffering. These traits are fundamental human psychological qualities. He wants to be good, but society will not allow that, and the creature's ability to realize that and saying, "If I cannot inspire love, I will cause fear," proves he is human-like. Although his appearance is monstrous, the creature's inner life is profoundly human. He feels loneliness, hope, jealousy, despair, and love. He seeks meaning, fears isolation, and responds to pain in ways consistent with human psychology. Shelley ultimately suggests that humanity is not defined by its physical form, but by emotion and psychological capacity. Through the creature's suffering, longing, and self-awareness, the novel proves that he is not a monster in mind, but psychologically human.